All right, welcome to Chapter 2, Part 2. We spent our whole first half talking about the structure of an atom, what determines its reactivity or chemical behavior. We looked at different types of chemical bonds, discussed energy and water properties and pH, a whole lot of information there. And what we're ready to talk about in Part 2 would be what I would classify as organic chemistry. And organic chemistry, I mentioned before, this is the chemistry of the cell. So now this is kind of where chemistry meets biology and getting more into the realm of our class work that we're going to be doing. Now with organic chemistry, again, we're talking, these are the molecules that make up our cells. These are the molecules that our cells use to do all of the chemical processes that are happening. By definition, organic molecules are carbon and hydrogen-based molecules. And the carbon is really the centerpiece. So you can also describe organic molecules as carbon-based. Remember, our carbon atom has atomic number of 6, which means 6 protons, and then atomic mass of 12. So it has 6 neutrons in the nucleus, and it has just 6 electrons. So that means it has 4 unpaired electrons in the outermost shell. It can bind then with 4 things. So that makes this really great connector piece to make these really big, elaborate, complicated molecules. To me, when I think about the carbon in our organic molecules, I think about a toy that I played with as a kid with Tinker Toys, and you had a building set and you had these little circular pieces, and then all the sticks go into those circle pieces, and that's the connector piece that's allowing you to build your structures. Carbon is like that center piece because it can make 4 bonds. You can get these really big, complicated, elaborate molecules. And so we will see that our organic molecules are bigger than what we've looked at so far. So far, the biggest thing we've really looked at is water molecule, which is 3 atoms. Macromolecules, big molecules, are going to have much more than 3 atoms as part of their structure. As we study our macromolecules, we will be, in each case, looking at what is described as the monomer, or the building block, the base unit for that particular type of macromolecule. And what we will see is that in many cases, our organic macromolecules will be chains of monomers linked together. And we can describe these chains of monomers as being polymers, where that prefix poly means many. So when we're talking about macromolecules, we're very often talking about polymers. So in each case, we'll look at what is the monomer, what is the building block, and then what are examples of polymers, or what does it look like when they come together. The other thing that we'll look at with our organic molecules are what are described as functional groups. So these are little molecule add-ons, you could think of them in that way if you want, that have their own specific atoms and their own specific functions. We don't really have to memorize these for this course, but you're going to see these and hear these quite a lot. We're going to talk about amino groups. So these groups include nitrogen and hydrogen. We're going to have a carboxyl group, which is carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. And hydroxyl group, we've already seen that in our discussion of pH. That's the OH group. And then the phosphate group, we'll see that also several molecules, and that's going to include a phosphate. As we look at our organic molecules, we do want to pay attention to those functional groups as well as the monomer. What is the building block for each one of those? So just some things to make sure you're paying attention to as you look ahead at each of our macromolecules in more detail. As we discuss our macromolecules, we will see that they fall into one of 4 categories. So we're going to be discussing the details of carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, and we'll have a presentation dedicated to each one of those. Again, as we look at each of these, we want to pay attention to the structure, so that includes the monomer and the functional groups. We want to look at the function. What is that? Why is that macromolecule important for the cell? And we want to be able to identify some examples, some molecules that fit into each one of these categories.